Welcome back to The India Show. Today's guest is Pradeep Gupta, one of the true pioneers of India's tech and digital media ecosystem. Pradeep is the founder and chairman of CyberMedia, which he started in the early 1980s, long before tech was even a mainstream category, and he grew it into the country's largest technology and media group. Over 4 decades, CyberMedia has shaped how millions of people understand technology, entrepreneurship, and the digital economy. Beyond media, Pradeep has played an influential role in building India's startup and innovation landscape, mentoring founders, and backing early-stage ventures. It's a real privilege to have you with us today.
We're very, very happy to have you on our podcast. I'd love to jump straight into the first question, which is that you founded CyberMedia in 1982, well before India's modern IT industry had really taken shape. What gave you the conviction to build a tech-focused media company at that moment?
Okay, so there are two interesting stories there. The first is, and I think first it is related to my background. So I'd done my education, and then after that I joined HCL. HCL was a startup at that time, right? So today it's $1 billion corporation, but at that time it was a startup. And I was amongst the first people who sort of joined that company. At HCL, you know, it was very entrepreneurial, and that is what sort of ignited the entrepreneurial spark in me. And that resulted in starting a software company in 1980. I left HCL and I started a software company. And now there is a chance encounter that happens. I was 26 years at that time, and as youngsters do, we used to have these places where you get together and have rum and coke, and bull sessions and stuff like that, as most youngsters do. So there was one such session which was going on. There were a bunch of us sitting there, and there was one girl in that group who used to work with UNICEF. And she started saying that, animal husbandry is very, very badly treated in India, and there should be a magazine for animals and stuff like that, so that they get properly taken care of. And there was another guy who was from a printing background. So he said, yeah, damn good, so you should do it, I'll help you. And I was the guy who was an MBA. So, I literally did the back of the envelope calculation for them. And so by that time, this guy is saying that the ream is of this size and there are 500 pages in that, etc., etc. And I did that calculation and I said, look, this is what a newsletter will end up costing you. They said, yeah, damn good, so we should do something about it. And then I butted in and I said that, listen, guys, I mean, I have no idea about animal husbandry, but IT I know. And IT, I have moved from Calcutta. I used to be posted in Calcutta from HCL, and I moved to Delhi. And I've seen that Delhi people don't know anything about Calcutta companies. Calcutta did not know anything of what was happening in India, in Delhi, and so on. And as far as the information technology industry is concerned, it sounds very exciting. I've been there right from the beginning, and I find it very, very exciting. So why not a newsletter for IT? And they said, yeah, we are with you. Okay, and that's how the idea took birth. And then, of course, I drew up a sort of a more detailed plan. And my friends, of course, abandoned me the moment, I said that, look, this is what we will do, and so on. And I had to find another friend who was a colleague, and I said, why don't you come in as an editor, and so on. And that's how CyberMedia started. And the rest is history.
That is amazing. And you can really tell that the trajectory, so much serendipity in it as well. Do you think there's any one major decision that you made in that first decade, maybe let's say, that fundamentally shaped cybermedia's trajectory?
Yeah, so one thing is there, we were very lucky because I think the market at that time was hungry for information. The information technology industry itself didn't have information about itself. Remember, this is the time when, in 82, when we started the magazine, the internet is not there. Okay, email is not there, right? The early days of email was there. And, the PC, till that time in India, there was no PC also. Because the PC came up in 1981. And India, we still had desktops. We had no desktops. We had those mega computers and, all of that stuff. The wax machines were there, but it was IBM and the bunch. That was the sort of a time that I'm talking about. In fact, even the word cyber had not really come into popular usage till that time. It was cybernetics is a science which deals with machines and information and so on. But the word cyber in general lexicon was not really there. But I guess the timing was very right, and therefore, within about 6 months, we actually got advertising support, and that is why we never had to sort of look back and say that, hey, listen, I made a mistake or something. But I think the bigger decision that happened was that after a few years, when DataQuest was stable, we decided to launch PC Quest, a second magazine, which was not a B2B but a B2C publication. By the way, even the word B2B and B2C were non-existent at that time. Okay, so started PC Quest and also went into market research. And at that time, a lot of people said that, look, as it is one publication in computers was bad and you are talking about two publications, you must be crazy. Why would you have two publications for computers? But I guess realizing that the needs of, by that time PCs were actually coming up, and so PC Quest was a huge success. And I think those decisions of actually uh, diversifying and going after multiple products is the one which really made the big difference.
Was there any moment? I mean, I can imagine there were several, given that everything you've just been saying. But was there any moment where you almost had second thoughts or thought, you know what, this is just not the right time, or this is not going to work? And how did you see through that as the founder?
So those timings were actually there before CyberMedia was launched. Because what happened was, this incident that I talked to you about was in 81, and
Mm.
we launched the magazine in 82. During those 6 7 months till such time as we actually set up the company, I went round, talking to various people in the industry. Lots of people said, magazine on computers. First of all, if you look at the magazines, the only magazines in India that work are the political magazines.
Mm.
uh, by the way, in India at that time, even business magazines, the Business India had just come out in 1980. So there
Crazy.
were no business magazines at that time. And even the other category that used to work is the film magazines, because Bollywood is a big industry, and so therefore people want to read gossip and so on. So yes, you had the film magazines. Even cricket, there was no magazine at that time. There was some children's magazine, but and they said that, you don't have general purpose magazines, and you're talking of a computer magazine, you must be crazy. So that time, yes, there was some self doubt which crept in. But once we started and once we found the initial success, after that there was no looking back ever and saying that, hey, listen, you know, perhaps we should have done something else, or should I continue or not continue? And so
How, I just to very quickly follow up. I mean, how did you find the mental strength to withstand all of this probably fairly predictable criticism at the time, and actually just stick to your guns and say, no, 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 this is going to work, this is going to be huge, and persevere? What was it that allowed you to really believe in the mission?
I guess it is that's what makes an entrepreneur. Okay, that you have to have a belief in yourself. You must have that aspiration, but you have to sort of back it with the passion. So the moment you have that passion to ensure that you're going to do to succeed in that, I think that is something which is essential. Not that we have not had bad times. We have had products that have not worked. We've gone through a downturn also. So all of those things have happened. But as long as you believe that what you're doing is right, uh, yes, I think those are the risks that any entrepreneur takes.
But what I find so incredible about your story is, I mean, as we were saying, you started at the start of the 1980s. You and your company grew with the Indian startup ecosystem until now, before it was even called the Indian startup ecosystem. I mean, as you were saying, it's just completely different times. Is there anything where you would say, from the outside, people of course see the big boom in India when it comes to innovation and startups. But is there anything that outsiders still really misunderstand about this story of growth and innovation in India?
Yes, I think, I would say that as far as uh, the external view is concerned, I think they miss one big point about India, which is the diversity of India. You know, so you have a huge diversity which is there in this country, and that diversity comes out of its economic diversity, it is gender diversity, it is language diversity which is there, and therefore it is actually a great test bed for multiple types of innovations. You can have something which is only catering to international markets and is expensive and stuff like that, and you could be catering to large numbers with very thin margins. So you have a complete kind of a range of different kind of solutions. So it's actually a very good ground for doing different sorts of innovations.
Can I ask you a little bit about that point of diversity? It seems to me like it is really one of those double-edged swords, right? This diversity could mean division. It could mean that every individual market is smaller. How do you think Indian entrepreneurs manage to actually leverage that diversity to make it an advantage?
So I mean, we live with it. Okay, so it's a daily sort of a thing that is there for us. But yes, what we all do is whatever is our product, define a focus for that, and then go ahead and focus on that particular sub segment of the industry. So that is the way most of the entrepreneurs would handle that particular issue.
Would you say that there are any particular changes in terms of your profile of an Indian founder, of an Indian entrepreneur, from the early days of the IT industry boom in the 80s and 90s to today?
Yeah, so few things, of course, stay, but one thing, the big change that has happened is that, let's say, if you look at the 80s and the 90s, the entire ecosystem was not there, right? So you did not have VCs, you did not have funding, the banks would not be ready to loan money to you. When it comes to hiring people, people will say, why am I leaving a good company and joining a startup? uh,
Mm.
Etc., etc. In fact, I would go a step before that. That um, doing your own business was not really a career objective for a number of people. If I look at my class at IIT, or I look at my class in IIM, if somebody was to ask a question, how many of you want to become entrepreneurs? You would probably find that less than 5% of the class would raise their hands, right? So that was the sort of a thing which is there. And today, if I go to some place and I say, how many of you want to be entrepreneurs? Almost 50% of the people will raise their hands. So it was not a career of choice, right? People used to say that that you probably haven't got a job, and that is the reason why you started your own business. Okay, so except for the big business houses, others were actually supposed to work for others, not for themselves, right? That used to be the kind of a scenario in. And when I'm talking of social pressures, your aunts, your uncles, all of them would say, "Hey, listen, this guy is, not taken up a multinational job, and he's actually trying to start a business. There must be something wrong with him." That used to be the sort of a scenario that was there. But also because of the fact that the ecosystem was not there. We all learned a lot of the what is today called as frugal innovation, right? So jugaad or whatever word you use for it. But you would you would conserve your capital very, very well, ensure that you were trying to look at the core business all the time. And burn rates were unheard of. I think that word burn rate also had not been discovered uh, in the 80s or the mid 90s. It's only mid 90s onwards that words like burn rate started coming up. So it was that is the big change that has happened in today's entrepreneur. That today, an entrepreneur, uh, yes, there are many more people who want to become an entrepreneur because they've seen there are role models. I want to be a unicorn and become a billion-dollar company, and these days, of course, a trillion-dollar company. So all of those. So a lot of people are getting in there, and there are incubators. There are places where you can get your angel funding, you can get your seed funding, you can get your round one, round two. You have all that entire ecosystem, which is now available. So I think that is a big change that has happened, in the sense that from a shortage to a plenty. That is the swing that has happened.
That makes sense. And I think now you're also, I mean, you've of course co founded the Indian Angel Network, and now you're on the board as well of the government's Funder Fund, which I think is worth 1.25 billion US dollars, and on boards of several other VCs. How is it being on that side of this table? And do you think there is a right way for governments to engage with the venture ecosystem?
So yeah, and actually, let me before I talk about Indian Angel Network, let me talk about the Fund of Funds. The Fund of Fund has been a very, very successful project of the government of India. And by the way, we have now got double of that money to deploy in more VCs. Okay, so it's really been a success story. But it started with a fund of 10,000 crores, which would be invested in VCs. So the government actually came up with a nice concept of not really investing directly into startups. They invested in VCs, and the VCs in turn invest in startups. And the government itself also gave this money, not for direct deployment, but they gave it to a bank, right? So, as a result of this chain getting created, one great thing that has happened is that it is one of those systems which is absolutely corruption free, right? So, there is no startup which can come to this fund of funds and say that, hey, listen, uh, you know, political pressure and therefore give me money, right?
Yeah.
Because the government's money is coming into a bank. The bank in turn has got a very professional investment committee, with majority of the people not from the government but from the private sector, and they invest in VCs, and VCs then invest in startups. Now, the end result of this is that the entire leverage on this money has been almost about 9 times. So the 10,000 crores actually resulted in 87,000 crores coming into the VC ecosystem. There are roughly about 150 VCs that have been funded by this money. Nearly 50% of India's unicorns can actually trace the money back into this particular fund. That this fund actually gave the money, and so on. Plus, the fund has had its domain specific directions clear, that we and therefore has given money to certain people who wanted to get into, to, let's say, northeast, the underdeveloped areas of this country, or if for women entrepreneurs, it has gone for social entrepreneurship, etc., etc. So it has really been a game changer. And I'm not saying that as part of the investment committee member, but if you ask the entire VC community, today it has actually become the gold standard for them, that they find it much easier to raise money from international funds, or from LPs, or from Indian LPs, if they have the stamp that yes, they've been funded by the fund of funds. And that is why there is the double amount of money which has now been made available to us, and that will go mostly in deep tech and so on. So I think the government's intervention in actually making a fundamental difference, this is a classic example of that. Coming to the Indian Angel Network, what happened there was that actually a few of us, again from information technology background, and we were all TIE members and so on, and we all got together and we said that, listen, yes, we are providing mentorship on the TIE platform, but these guys need some money, right? And therefore, can we set up something? And therefore, uh, some of us sort of became the sponsors of the fund, went to LPs, raised a smaller fund, and we started investing in startups. This happened in 1999. And while we were going through the investments, 9/11 happened, and the entire dot com bust happened, and everything came crashing down. Friends from whom we had taken money said that, listen, we gave you the money, but, don't ask us for the last tranche of 30%, because it will be throwing good money after bad money, and so on. All of those kind of things happened. But again, we stuck to our guns. Each of us took up one company each, and we said we will work with them. And we ensured that we turned around, and then we had good successes and so on. However, we also found that the fund structure meant that you could invest in new startups only for the first few years, because after that you're nurturing or exiting, right? So either we go in for a second fund, or we said that let's create an Indian Angel Network, which becomes like a club where continuously there are members who commit a certain sort of notional amount, that this is what I am ready to invest over a year. And we will get startups coming in. Startups make the presentations, and if we like those, then we go ahead and select one of those startups and then pass the hat around amongst the club members. So that was the concept with which Indian Angel Network started, which was the fund, the first angel fund in India, right? Uh, which sort of worked on this particular model. And soon enough, we were investing, perhaps to begin with, maybe two companies in a month, or one company in every 2 months. And today, it's become about two companies in a month. Earlier, it used to be about six odd investments, but now almost about 30, 40 investments actually happen from IN every year. Iron also has a fund with the regular fund structure, but it also has this angel fund, which becomes a continuous supply of money every year for angels. So there is no such time where we say, oh, now we are going through an exit and therefore we cannot invest in startups. And IIN, once again, I think sort of defined the entire angel framework for India, and ended up, there were a number of other angel funds that then came subsequently, Mumbai Angels and Rajasthan Angels and Chennai Angels and so on. So many others followed, but IIN was the one which really set the ball.
What I find so interesting about the what you were talking about, the sort of genesis of the Indian Angel Network, was that move from we're mentoring a series of startups to, okay, we actually need to find a way of giving them some capital as well. And I think that mentorship is something that I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on. I mean, you are a serial startup mentor. I think it's fair to say you've mentored over 350 startups. You've been awarded the National Entrepreneurship Award as the best mentor. What makes a mentor truly valuable to a startup? And is there anything you think founders maybe misunderstand about mentorship and that relationship, or and how the whole dynamics of that work?
Okay, so I always, when I'm asked about this, I always use an example from Indian mythology. And I'm sure a number of your viewers would be Indians, and therefore I can share that example with you. But if you look at the Mahabharata, okay, the great war which that happened between two warring cousins, right? Arjun is the great warrior, right? Uh, but Arjun required Krishna as his mentor. And there was a time when the entire war starts, when Krishna says that, when Arjun says, why am I fighting my cousins? On the other side, I've got my grandfather, etc., etc. It's all the people from the same clan. And he's ready to lay down arms. And then Lord Krishna, who was actually he runs his chariot, right? He is the one who gives him. So okay, just to give you that historical perspective, uh, Krishna is a god, right? And but he decides to take a stance in the war where he says that I will not raise any arms and so on, but I'm ready to guide, I'm ready to coach. Okay. And therefore, when Arjun is ready to lay down his arms, uh, Krishna gave him the Gita, right? I'm sure you're familiar with Gita. The Bhagavad Gita, which actually talks about the principles of, work over work and duties and so on. Okay, and so he said it's your duty to go ahead and do it, and that sort of molded the entire Hindu thought. Anyway, so coming back to the main thing. So if you look at this example of Arjun and Krishna, Arjun is the warrior, but Krishna is the mentor. The mentor gives him the right advice. He never fights the war for him. He is not the one who raises, because he could have very well fought the war himself also, but he doesn't. He guides him. That is the role that I think is the most important role as far as a mentor is concerned. That you have to be a great listener and understand what the founder is going through, and then after that you need to be able to guide the person in the right direction. You have to be a coach. Okay. uh, And yes, you have to then make the connections, because yes, you have the right connections, and therefore you possibly connect them with, open the doors for the founders in other circles. But you should not actually end up doing things yourself, right? Because then the mentor mentee relationship changes. And the right mentor mentee relationship is where you are giving advice and helping the startup to overcome their problems. So
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you don't want to do the legwork yourself, but sort of support. Um, Another domain where that I think it's a big topic for you and where you offer a lot of support is you share the NCPDP, which is a major advocacy group for persons with disabilities. I was wondering about that and what role should the tech sector play, in your opinion, in building out more inclusive environments?
Yeah. So, I think tech can actually be a great leveler, right? I mean, you've seen Avatar, right? Uh, so Jake is not a person with paralysis in his body, right? In real life, he is, but in the virtual world, he is not, right? So he's jumping all over the place and flying great birds and so on, right?
Yeah.
So so therefore, a number of those disabilities can actually be addressed using technology, right? Uh, if you have visual issues, there are technologies that are available. If you have hearing issues, there are technologies which are available. You know, 10-minute grocery delivery is more helpful for a person with locomotor disability than for somebody who can walk up to a market, right? So therefore, what I'm trying to say is that a number of disabilities can actually be addressed by technology. And Stephen Hawking is a prime example where he communicated only by slight movement of his fingers, right? And we have to find more and more such tech solutions. Therefore, what I'm currently doing is that I'm using my sort of last 3 decades of working with the startups ecosystem, and last 3 decades I've also been working in the disability sector to actually set up the first assistive technology hub. Okay. So we have this will be a center of excellence. We've already started supporting some startups which are working on assistive technology. So far, 25 of them have been funded. They've been given seed money. So, you said, wow, Lucas. I must say that I was pleasantly surprised when we actually did the first challenge. We thought that we'll perhaps get some 10 odd startups saying that they're doing something on assistive technology. But we found that there were a lot of people who actually wanted to do work in that area. And therefore, we were actually able to select 15. And then in the second cohort, we've selected another 10. The third cohort, the selection has happened. The funding has not as yet happened, but that's another 10 companies. But this is still virtual incubation being done. We want to convert that into a physical assistive technology hub. And at Allahabad, they have come forward. STPI is part of that entire thing, and NCPDP, and we are launching, as I said, the first assistive technology hub in India. And I think that is something that should impact a whole a huge number of people and a lot of lives.
Pradeep, can I ask you? I mean, you are someone who's had such a vastly successful career with CyberMedia. You've also expanded significantly into mentoring. You've mentored over 350 startups. You're involved in a lot of VCs. You're involved in IIT and in TIE and in setting up all of these hubs. What keeps you going in this, because it's such an amazing range, and clearly I think what shines pretty through is just a love for innovation and for startups and for sharing your experience. What would you say is it that keeps you interested and keeps you going in all of these different ventures and endeavors?
Well, every day is a new day. That's been always my principle, that you start every day as a fresh day, and you think, what is it where you can make a difference? Because I think uh, that is what makes life worth living for. If you can actually make a difference to others.
That's really beautiful. Thank you so much, Pradeep. To wrap up, I'd like to ask you a question which has become a little bit of a tradition here on this format, which is that if you could pick one figure from history that you think would have been incredibly successful, maybe unicorn founder today, who would it be and why?
I think one person who, from history, who, given today's scenario, would 100% be a unicorn would be Nikola Tesla.
Hmm.
Okay. I mean, that guy was an absolute genius and came up with so many different innovations and inventions and so on. You did not have the startup ecosystem around that to be able to convert those deep technologies into to businesses and so on. So
I think you're very, very, very probably right. It's been such a pleasure. We're very, very grateful for the time you've given us. We've covered such a range of topics, and I think what really stood out to me is the point you made at the end, which was that what drives you as a founder, as an entrepreneur, is really wanting to make a difference. And I think that's such an important message to share.
thank
Thank you,
you for
Pradeep.
Morgan and Lucas for great questions. Absolutely wonderful discussion that we've had. Wonderful having this chat with you.
Thank you.